How often would you be in contact with your father on a weekly basis?
Prior to the disagreement we had, you know,
Yeah. Well, from, say, in 2021, 2022.
I would say at least once a week, sometimes more through text. I didn't always see him every week, but I mean, we communicated through text or, you know, other things. He would show me what he found at yard sales and stuff.
So once a week, you might have seen him. You might have had a text message with him, right?
Yeah, once a week, because he would stop by and, you know, see my son as well at times.
Okay. Now, and during this period of time, you also maintained a friendly relationship with Barbara Randall, correct?
Sure, yeah.
And that was the other lady that your father at that point in time was seeing along with Judy Church, right?
One of them, yes. Yeah.
Okay. When you say one of them?
Well, yeah, one of Judy or Barbara.
Okay. But you were having a relationship with both.
Yeah.
What's the period of time that you were actually living at 108 Central Street? Do you remember the years?
I don't want to say I don't know the specific year.
But would that have been prior to 2019?
Sounds familiar, yeah.
Okay. Would it have been back as early as 2017?
It could have been, yeah.
Okay. And you stayed there for, was it 1 year upstairs and 1 year downstairs?
Yeah, upstairs, but then intermittently downstairs. You know, I would go to friends' houses or etc.
When you was downstairs?
Yes.
Okay. And it's during that time frame then, maybe back to 2017, that you saw the photograph, that was displayed in the photograph of the voodoo doll?
Can you rephrase it again?
Mr. Camilio had showed you a picture. Let me show you that to you. It's been marked as exhibit number 7.
Yep.
Just ask you to look at that for a moment yourself. You had said you would indicate that you were able to identify that, and that was something that you saw in the home at 108 Central Street, right?
Yeah, one of them.
Okay. Back in, and that would have been in the 2017 time frame when you were there?
I don't remember specifically, but there was.
You weren't there in 2020, right?
Well, as long as I wasn't there in 2020, but I still see my father on occasions after, yes.
Well, but you had the restraining order in 2020, right?
Yes.
All right. So you wouldn't have been seeing your father at that location in 2020, right?
I sometimes did, yeah.
And then 2021, this restraining order was still in effect, right?
Yep.
So that's prior to 2020, you would have seen that item.
Prior to 22. I mean, she had multiple. This wasn't the only one. So you're asking me like there was multiple different dolls. Wasn't just that one.
So you said that Mr. Fowler was your first cousin?
Yes.
So you guys pretty close in age, so grew up together?
He was about 6, 7 years older than me.
Okay.
As a child, elementary school type, we were kind of close as a family. As we grew older, not so much.
Okay. In the last couple of years of his life, sir, how often would you see Mr. Fowler?
In the summertime, once to twice a month. Not really at all through the winter.
Okay. And were these sort of planned meetings or planned get-togethers, or was just
No.
what were the circumstances under which you would sometimes see
We
Mr.
both
Fowler?
lived on Saucer Beach, so if I went to a bar or a restaurant, I would usually see him there.
Okay. And did you know a woman named Judy Church?
Yes, I did.
How did you meet Miss Church?
She was dating Leroy.
Okay. And how long had you known Miss Church as of 2022, sir? Give or take.
I'm going to guess since they first got together, so maybe 8 years or so.
Okay. And when you would see Mr. Fowler out and about on Salisbury Beach, would you see Miss Church as well?
Yes, usually.
Okay. And did you ever did you see her by herself as opposed to with Mr.
A couple
Church?
times.
How was your relationship with Mr. Fowler, sir?
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about Miss Church?
Same.
All right.
No issues.
No issues. All right. Now, you said that these meetings that you've described for us were generally just happenstance. You just happened to be in the same bar, the same part of the beach as Mr. Church, excuse me, Miss Church or Mr. Fowler?
Yep.
Did you have any planned meetups that you guys ever
No,
did?
never.
No. Okay. Now, sir, I want to draw your attention specifically to the summer of 2022. Now, during that, during the summer, and I know you don't remember the exact date, did you have occasion to run into Mr. Fowler and Miss Church at one of the bars on Salisbury Beach?
Yes, I did.
What bar was that?
Uncle Eddie's?
Okay. And what kind of a establishment, you know, it's a bar, but what kind of establishment is Uncle Eddie's?
It's considered a dive bar.
Okay. And popular?
Very.
Okay. And did you on one of those one day in the summer of 2022 run into both Mr. Fowler and Miss Church in Uncle Eddie's?
Yes.
Okay. Was it a planned meetup?
No, it's not.
Just happened to be in there at the same time?
Yep.
Okay. And did you have a conversation, interact socially with them while they were in the bar?
Yes. When I saw them, we usually interacted.
Okay. Do you remember what day of the week it was?
It was either a Saturday or a Sunday. I don't.
And how do you remember that?
Because I'm usually away in the summertime. I live up in the mountains for the most part.
Okay.
But I happened to be home that weekend.
Okay. And was it crowded?
Very.
All right. Now, at some point during your interactions with Mr. Fowler and Miss Church that day, did the subject of cheating on a partner or spouse come up?
Yes.
Okay. And what was Miss Church's comment about that sort of activity?
She said, if he ever cheats on me, I will poison him.
Okay. All right. And did the conversation just kind of continue on from there?
Yeah, there was a little more talk afterwards.
Okay. And then, you know, how much longer did you spend socializing with them that day?
If I had to guess the total conversation through the whole time they were there, maybe 3 to 4 minutes.
At some point after that 20-year period, did you reconnect with Mr. Fowler in some way?
Yes, I did.
What were the circumstances in which you reconnected with him?
What do you mean, how I did?
Yeah, how'd you reconnect with him?
Through Facebook.
And did you reach out to him or did he reach out to you?
He reached out to me.
As a result of him reaching out to you, when approximately was that? What year, if you remember?
Oh, it was like 8 years ago.
8 years ago from now or 8 years ago from when he passed away?
Both. I mean, it was about 8 years ago.
Okay. And at some point after he reached out to you, did the two of you meet up in person?
Yes.
Did you begin a relationship with him?
Yes, we did.
How long were you in a relationship with him prior to him passing away?
8 years.
Okay. And how would you describe your relationship with him?
Off and on.
What do you mean by off and on?
There were good times and there were bad times.
Would he stay at your house?
Yes.
How often would he stay at your house?
He'd stay a couple nights, then he'd go home.
Where was home?
At my house. Oh, his house? At Judy Church's.
Who was Judy Church?
His other girlfriend.
And you were aware of Miss Church being his other girlfriend from the time you started seeing him after he Facebook messaged
Not
you?
in the beginning, no.
How long after you started, when you reconnected with him, did you become aware of Miss Church?
I would say within 6 months.
How did you become aware of her?
Probably through conversation with him or something.
You said that he would come to your house and stay for a few days and then leave?
Yes.
How often would he come and go from your house?
Numerous times.
Did he ever live with you?
Not really.
What types of things would the two of you do together when he was at your home?
We did everything. I mean, there was never a boring moment with him. My grandkids were a huge part of our lives.
What types of things would you do with your grandkids?
Oh, we do rail trails from here, from Seabrook to Newburyport. We take bikes down, then we go sledding, yard sailing, and just everyday things.
How would you describe the relationship he had with your grandchildren?
Excellent. Very, very good.
Where was he living at the time? Do you know the address that he was living?
Down Salisbury Beach.
And he was living, you said, with Miss Church?
Yes.
Did you know her?
Before this, no.
At some point, you said you became aware of her. At any point, did you meet her?
I guess, yeah. Down the road, yes. I did. I mean, physically seen her, yes.
Did you ever have conversations with her?
Not really, no. Not that I can recall.
Do you know, did you have a nickname for her?
Yes.
What was the nickname you had for her?
Grandma.
Why'd you call her Grandma?
Because she looked like one?
How would you describe the relationship you had with Miss Church?
Not existing.
Did you, during the course of your relationship with Mr. Fowler, did you ever buy him expensive things?
No.
Did you ever buy him a house,
No.
a car,
No.
a motorcycle?
No.
When he was at your home, what types of things would he eat or drink?
He always drank milk, and he would drink Coke.
Did you know him to ever drink alcohol?
Maybe 3 times that I knew him in the 8 years.
And when he did drink during those 3 times, what did you see him drink?
Beer.
Were you aware if he used any drugs or narcotics?
Yes.
What were you aware of?
I was aware of cocaine, and he was prescribed Percocet.
During your time with Mr. Fowler, did he ever make any comments to you about being depressed or wanting to kill himself?
No.
How would you describe Mr. Fowler's personality when he was with you?
Fine.
Were there times, you said that the two of you are on and off, correct?
Yes.
How often would you be on and off during the course of the 8 years?
Sporadically.
Was there a time about a year prior to Mr. Fowler's death that he went to Florida?
Yes.
And were you aware that he was going to Florida?
Yes.
How did you feel about him going to Florida?
I told him to go. Have a good time.
And why was that?
Because I was done with it. I didn't want the back and forth anymore. It was over to me.
And when you say over, how many times would you and Mr. Fowler be over and then get back together?
Numerous.
So when you would tell him it was over, was it ever really over?
No.
When Mr. Fowler would tell you it was over, was it ever really over?
No.
Who would always be the one to come back?
Him.
When he went to Florida about a year prior, so about 2021, how did you know he came back?
I picked him up
Where did you pick him up?
at the airport.
And did he call you and ask you to pick him up?
Yes.
How long had he been in Florida, prior to you going to pick him up at the airport?
I want to say a couple days, maybe 3, tops 4.
When he came home, did he come home alone?
Yes.
How long after he came home do you know who he went to Florida with at that time?
Yes.
Who?
Judy Church.
How long after he came home did Miss Church come home, if you know?
I'd say immediately.
Did you also become aware of a plan that Mr. Fowler had to go back to Florida and move there in November or around November of 2022?
I was aware it was going to happen, yes.
And how did you react to that?
Told him to go.
Was that for the same reason that you said?
Yes.
During the course of your relationship with Mr. Fowler, did he ever propose to you?
Yes.
How many times?
Twice.
Did you say yes?
I did the first time. The second time I must have said yes, but I don't really remember.
And then is it fair to say that after you said yes, the relationship went off again?
Probably after, obviously, yeah, after that.
I want to specifically talk to you about the time period leading up to Mr. Fowler's death on November 13th of 2022. About a month prior to his death, did he ever complain to you about his health while you were in person with him?
Yes.
Specifically, did he complain about his stomach?
Yes.
Could you describe to the jurors what did he tell you? Did he ask you to do something?
Well, it was really hard. It was bloated, and it was like super hard. And he kept saying, feel the slump, feel the slump.
And did you feel the lump?
Yes, I did.
And could you feel that it was hard and bloated like you just described?
It was hard, and it was bulging. You could see it.
And did that go on for a period of time that he would ask you to feel that lump?
Not that I recall.
Were you able to push on it in any way?
Yeah, I did push on it that day.
Did he make other complaints to you around that time about his health?
Just that he was tired. He didn't really feel that good here and there.
Did you make observations of him being tired?
Not really. He wasn't as get up and go, maybe, but it was the day,
At some point around that time period, did you observe him throw up?
Yes.
Could you describe to the jurors what you saw? What were the circumstances?
He had just walked in my house, and he was normal, and he was talking, and within 10 minutes, he just threw up. It just projectiled out of his mouth, like a circle of it.
Is that what you mean by projectile? There was a circle?
Yeah.
And had you ever seen him throw up in any way before?
No.
How did he react? What observations did you make of him when he was throwing up like that?
Well, he was embarrassed of the mess he had made on the floor. And I was like, I don't care, What's going on? And he said, I don't know.
At some point, did he also have concerns when he used the bathroom? Specifically as it related to having a bowel movement?
Yes.
Could you describe to the jury, what did he show you after he had a bowel movement?
He went in the bathroom, and he hollered to me, and I went over, and he goes, look, see, I told you. And he had wiped himself, and it was on the toilet paper. There was blood.
How many times would you say that you observed blood on the toilet paper while he was at your...
One time.
So you said that Big Leroy taught you a lot of the construction work that you know today. Is that fair?
Yeah.
How did he, how was it that he came to sort of teach you that stuff?
Brought me to work. I was getting in trouble, never really stopped getting in trouble, but, I used to get in trouble a lot, and he said, you got to work. If you're not going to go to school, you're not going to, you're going to stay here, you got to work.
Okay. And so he took you to the jobs that he was doing, back 10, 15, 20 years ago, or even more than that?
Yeah.
Okay. And you just kept doing that sort of work as you
Yeah, I
got
liked
older?
it. I enjoy it.
Okay. Now, in the time frame just before Mr. Fowler's Big Leroy's death, were you seeing him? Were you guys in contact during that time frame?
Yeah, we were in contact, not as much as we used to be, but we were definitely in contact. He had worked with us in Vermont. We were building a grow facility up there. He worked there with us. I worked on his house. I did some bending some metal and putting fascia and rake on and stuff like that.
When you say his house, are you talking
Well, his and Judy's home together.
Okay, so the one over on Salisbury Beach on
Yeah,
Central Ave.
yes.
Okay. And you mentioned that he was doing some work with you up in Vermont.
Yeah.
What were you guys, what were you building up in Vermont?
We were building a grow facility, like marijuana grow facility.
Okay. And were you staying up in Vermont during the time frame that you were building this house, or were you just driving up there?
We would drive up, stay a couple days, and then come back.
And did you and Big Leroy drive up together?
Yes.
Okay. Now, during one of those drives, did Big Leroy tell you something that he was sort of concerned about regarding his relationship with Judy?
Yeah, he said he thought she was poisoning him.
Okay. And do you remember what time frame that was in relation to his death? So he died on November 13th, 2022. Do you remember about when that was in relation to the?
Let's say maybe October.
Okay. Was that on one of these drives that you were talking about?
Yeah, it was a long drive. It was like a 2-hour drive there, 2.5 hours. So, we would talk, and it came up in conversation,
Okay. And did he tell you sort of the symptoms that he was feeling as a result of, not feeling well?
He said his stomach was bloated, stomach pains, dizziness.
No, I'm going to overrule that. But I want to give the jury an instruction about the statement that was just attributed to Mr. Fowler by Mr. Hawkins. So I want to give what's known as a limiting instruction regarding this testimony that you just heard from Mr. Hawkins. I gave an instruction earlier. You may recall when Tammy Carbone, Mr. Fowler's sister, was testifying, and she related at that time a statement that she said Miss Church had made to her, which included something that Mr. Fowler purportedly had said to Miss Church. It's for you to determine whether and to what extent you credit the testimony that you've just heard of Mr. Hawkins regarding this statement that he says Mr. Fowler made, just as it was up to you to determine whether you credited Ms. Carbone's statement, or testimony rather, about Ms. Church's statement. But to whatever extent that you do credit Mr. Hawkins' testimony, you may only consider the statement that he has attributed to Mr. Fowler for a limited purpose, which is as evidence of Mr. Fowler's state of mind prior to his death. You may consider Mr. Fowler's state of mind in assessing whether or not he ingested ethylene glycol knowingly and intentionally, but you may not consider the statement for the truth of his stated belief regarding the defendant, Ms. Church, and her conduct. That would be an impermissible and forbidden use of that evidence, and it would be unfair to Ms. Church. So you may only consider that statement for that one limited, narrow purpose. Now, Mr. Camellia is going to ask Mr. Hawkins about some additional statements. These other statements don't have that same limiting instruction. I just want to make that clear. You consider these for whatever purposes you think are relevant. Go ahead, Mr. Camellia.
So you were getting ready to describe for us, sir, the symptoms that Mr. Fowler told you he was having at that time that you had the conversation about the poisoning when he said he was sick.
He was just saying that he would feel dizzy, his stomach was bloated, diarrhea, throwing up. Just think that's about it.
Did he mention having a hard time breathing?
Yeah, he did say he was having a little bit of a hard time breathing.
All right. And so you guys were you staying together at a hotel or a motel out there?
Yes,
yeah. And did you make any observations that night of any what appeared to be health problems he was having at that point?
Yeah, he was having a hard time breathing that night. He was having a terrible time breathing, moaning in his sleep. Yeah, I checked. I got up and checked on him once because it was kind of. But then the next day he was a little bit under the weather, but he seemed all right. He seemed like he was breathing fine.
Okay. Now, I had asked you when that conversation took place, and you said you thought maybe sometime October. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. So we had gone up there twice.
Let me stop you for 1 sec. Right. You remember talking to the police on November 12th, 2022. Do you remember that, having that conversation with the police?
Yes.
And that was recorded. You're aware
Yes.
that was being recorded. Page 5. I got it. Okay. And if I were to show you that that transcript from that conversation with the police, would that help you remember exactly when that conversation took place?
Yes, it would.
All right. Let me just point you to page 5, and starting right here. Just read that to yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that help refresh your memory about how long before Leroy died that this conversation took place?
Yes,
And what was it, sir?
it was, I would say, probably towards the end of October.
I believe he had hypertension, but more importantly, there was just a discoloration to the tissue of the kidney, which I wasn't. You can't tell what it is just from looking at the kidney, but I looked at it under the microscope.
Okay. All right. So when you looked at the kidney under the microscope to look at that discoloration, what did you find?
I found something called acute tubular necrosis. That's just when the tubules in the kidneys all die.
They die?
Yes. And also more importantly, or also important, the kidneys under a polarized light filter on the microscope showed numerous crystals.
What kind of crystals were they, sir?
These crystals were calcium oxalate crystals.
Okay. Sir, I'm gonna hand you 4 pieces of paper that contain 5 images. And just ask you to take a look at those, okay?
Sure.
Do you recognize those images?
Yes.
What do you recognize them to be, sir?
These are images that I took of the microscopic images of the kidney that I included in the autopsy report.
All right. And do these photographs depict the calcium oxalate crystals that you just mentioned to the jury?
Yes.
Your Honor, I offer these as the next, there's 4 pages of exhibit.
Any objection? No objection. They may come in. Thank you.
And Doctor, which one of these images here is the one that best depicts the the calcium oxalate crystals that you just mentioned to us?
Different ones depict different things. This one kind of shows the extent of how many crystals there were.
All right, let me start with that one then.
Okay.
I'm going to just put this up.
Which number is that, Mr. Camilio?
This, thank you, Judge. This is 64. If we can get the autofocus to work. All right, there we go. And so the white, sort of the white, yellow, red-ish objects on the black background, the colored objects there, those are the crystals that you're talking about?
Yes, on this screen it just looks like black and white.
Yep.
The black is what it would look like with no crystals because the light is polarized to where you can't see any of the kidney, and the crystals are the white that you can see.
Okay.
So that's how many there were in this area of kidney.
And should there be any crystals in that area of the kidney?
No.
Oh, I leave the other side. What do some of those other photographs show that you can't see in this one, sir?
They show the kidney architecture because when you zoom in, even the polarized light allows you to see the kidney again.
Okay.
And it shows more crystals up close so you can see their shape better.
Okay. And the damage to the kidney that you just described for us, the acute tubular necrosis, is that visible in these types of images?
You would not be able to tell by looking at any of those.
All right, thank you. Now, calcium oxalate crystals in the kidney, is that said that they're not supposed to be there, right?
Correct.
Okay, so that's concerning for you, something that you then look at in more detail in connection with the autopsy, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Based on what you knew about Mr. Fowler's presentation at Anna Jake's Hospital, Mount Auburn Hospital, and Beth Israel, combined with the calcium oxalate crystals that you found in the kidney, what were you now investigating as his cause of death?
So if I had discovered these calcium oxalate crystals in the kidneys, not knowing anything else, that would immediately make me think this might be an ethylene glycol poisoning case. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
But I knew additional information before that, so I already knew to look for them.
Okay. What sort of additional information did you have, sir?
I knew from the medical records that the physicians at the hospital, one of the hospitals where he was treated, had seen calcium oxalate crystals in his urine, and that he had many other findings, lab findings, and symptoms that all match up with ethylene glycol toxicity.
All right. And that would include the anion gap, an osmolar gap, and metabolic acidosis, among others?
Yes, among many other things,
Okay.
yes.
All right. So in order to sort of continue to explore, what you said was the first thing that popped in your mind is ethylene glycol poisoning. Did you send out for testing a blood sample that was taken at Anna Jake's Hospital a little bit after 9 a.m. on November 11th, 2022?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you request that be tested for?
Originally, it got sent to our state police lab here in Massachusetts to test for all the normal things that we screen every possible overdose patient for. So it got tested for many things there. And then I asked specifically for it to be sent to NMS to test for ethylene glycol.
Okay. So let's start with the original panel that was done by the Massachusetts State Police. Was there anything in that testing that you noted as part of your autopsy?
Yes.
Okay, what was that?
That was positive for something called benzoylecgonine, which is a metabolite of cocaine.
Okay. So there were some cocaine metabolites in Mr. Fowler's blood?
Yes.
All right. Anything else in that? This is essentially a toxicology test, is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else in that toxicology report that you noted or was important to you?
No.
Okay. There was no evidence of Percocet use by Mr. Fowler, is that fair to say?
Percocet is acetaminophen, Tylenol, mixed with oxycodone, and both of those were completely negative.
Now, with respect to the additional testing that was done at NMS labs, what was NMS testing for you?
I believe in this case they were only testing for ethylene glycol.
Okay. And you received the report back from NMS with their findings as to the presence of ethylene glycol in Mr. Fowler's blood, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What were the results of the testing?
It was present in this sample. The concentration was 52 nanograms per milligrams
Milligrams
per deciliter.
All right.
Sorry. Nanograms per deciliter.
All right. Once you got that result back, and then in connection with the tubular necrosis that you described for us, the calcium oxalate crystals in the kidney, the brain swelling and brain stem hemorrhage, and then in conjunction with all of the information that you had from Mr. Fowler's medical records, were you able to determine his cause of death to a reasonable degree of professional certainty?
Yes.
And what was your conclusion, sir?
That it was ethylene glycol poisoning.
Okay. So how does ethylene glycol kill somebody?
Sure. Let me just correct. Since I said nanograms per deciliter, it was milligrams per deciliter.
Okay.
Just for the record.
All right, thank
How ethylene glycol kills someone, it's a rather prolonged process. After ingestion, it usually takes a few minutes, sometimes up to 30 minutes, to show any symptoms, but there are generally 3 groups of symptoms that you see at different times. The first group generally happens in the first 12 hours, and you see mainly neurologic symptoms, so it acts a lot like ethanol intoxication. Ethanol is just the alcohol that people drink at bars. So you exhibit similar behaviors, loss of coordination, slurring of speech, confusion. Depending on the amount, you can also have vomiting, abdominal pain. You can even die during this period and have seizures. Then usually after 12 hours post-ingestion, you start having more cardiovascular symptoms, and those include high blood pressure, fast heartbeat. You can have what's called Kussmaul respirations. That's just breathing very quickly and very deeply. And you do that because what you also have during this period, even sometimes earlier, is metabolic acidosis. That's when your blood becomes more acidic than it should be. And your body wants to correct that by breathing deeply and quickly. So that's why you have those breathing changes. You can also, during this time, die from cardiac arrhythmias or from congestive heart failure. And then the later period, usually after a day or 2, you can have renal failure, kidney failure. And the reason this happens is, I should back up and say, ethylene glycol itself is not necessarily toxic when it's in your bloodstream. It gets changed by an enzyme in the liver into first glycolic acid, which is what causes the metabolic acidosis. And that is toxic to many different organs. And then the glycolic acid can or is eventually changed to oxalic acid. Oxalic acid is what damages the kidneys. It combines with the calcium that's normally in your bloodstream into the calcium oxalate crystals that we just saw. So this decreases the amount of calcium in your bloodstream, which causes your muscles to have spasms. So during this portion, you can also have muscle jerking and spasms, almost like seizures, but not of your brain. But those crystals that we saw in the kidneys are what kills the kidney cells. It blocks some of the tubules, it damages them. The acid itself might also damage the cells. So that is the final thing, is the renal failure.
And that the renal failure is the renal failure, the calcium oxalate crystals, the tubular necrosis, that would be essentially stage 3 of the 3 phases that you just talked to us about?
Yes, and you can die during any of these phases. Generally, you die from multi-organ failure, but these are the organs that are affected during those certain times.